nervous and you're like, I don't know, the bathroom so bad. That one's the best because there's a bathroom right around there. But a great way to make your way out. Don't worry about it. And then there's our announcements for this room. But there's also baskets on your guys' tables with some pens if you guys need pens. And I'm going to welcome down our pastor, Matt Olszewski, who's going to give us our message for today. So give him a round of applause.
No, I'm good. Yeah. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited to have everybody here this morning. Like Sarah said, my name is Matt Olszewski. I am one of the pastors here. You will meet the other pastor, Tom. He will be speaking next week. He's also up here playing the bass as well. But we are so excited to be here this morning. This is a new room for us, and this is kind of a new stage for us as a church. And so we're all kind of learning together. We're getting used to this room together. We can't control the air conditioning. I probably think that some of you wish we could control the air conditioning this morning. We're just going to ignore whatever this monstrosity is, right? It's not here. It's covered by a black curtain. Nobody notices, right? Okay? But we really believe that this is going to be a great space for us to start a new aspect of our church. For the past 13 years, for some of you that are new, we have historically just been for college students only. And we met closer to the interior of campus in the student union, but now we are opening it up to the community. And what I'm most excited about this new thing is that I've always been a part of a college church. It's been normal to me. I haven't really been a part of any community churches where we have multi-generational representation in our church. And the thing that I've been excited the most about is that I have one child who is 19, so he's college aged. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and then I have a 13-year-old son. And what's been normal for them is to walk into a space and see college students worshiping Jesus. And that's been so powerful. For them to be this little, and now they're as tall as me, to have them see week after week students that aren't afraid and that are actually excited about pursuing Jesus, and that it's actually possible in college, right? Because some of you have walked onto this campus thinking and heard the horror stories of, oh, I'm not going to follow Jesus anymore because I'm walking on a college campus. Not true. It's not true. We really believe that this is a place where your faith can thrive and grow. And you're going to be able to see college students worship, and you're going to be able to see people that are older than me. I'm not the oldest person in the room anymore. There's actually one older person in this church before, but I won't mention my wife's name. But we have wisdom, and we're praying for more wisdom to enter into this room. Women and men who have lived a life of following Jesus for even longer than I have, that can walk with you college students. And I'm so excited about that. And because there's so much new this morning, we are going to do something that we do every single year, and we are going to explain where we get the name H2O, right? Some of you might have walked in here this morning thinking, oh, that's kind of a catchy name for a church. I have no idea why they have called their church H2O. And so we're going to be doing that, and we're going to be walking through a book of the Bible, book of John in chapter 4. So if you have a Bible, you can open up to John chapter 4. If you don't have a Bible, that's no big deal. All the words will be on the screen. And also, we have a ton of Bibles just right out this doorway. If you want a free Bible, no cost, just take it. We'd love for you to have a Bible. And so we are also going to be kicking off a series this morning called Jesus Unfiltered. Jesus Unfiltered. We are going to be going through, I think it's 4 or 5 weeks of looking at stories where Jesus did things and said things and you're kind of like, oh, that's a little different, right? Probably shouldn't have said that out loud, or probably shouldn't have done that. So we're going to be going and looking at these stories of Jesus unfiltered. And so, like I said, we're going to be in the book of John, John chapter 4. And before we get into the story, I just want to explain to you a little bit of background here, okay? John is one of Jesus's closest friends. He's one of his disciples, a guy that was just living a normal life, doing his job, fishing, and then Jesus came to him and said, "Follow me." He stopped everything and he started following Jesus, and he was able to see Jesus up close. Everything he did, everything he said, for about 3 years. And so John started writing all this stuff down, and that's where we get what we have here in the book of John in the Bible. And so what's happening here is that Jesus is traveling with his whole group of disciples, his closest friends, John included. Okay, so they're traveling from Jerusalem to Nazareth. Okay, they're moving south to north. All right, and if we take a look at this map, there was a decision that every person, every Jewish person needed to make at this time. Jesus and all of his disciples, they were Jews, and they had to decide whether they were going to go around Samaria, which is the blue mark, which would be much harder because you'd have to go through water, you'd have to go through mountains. It was a much harder traveling experience. But the reason they did that was because the Jewish people and the Samaritans didn't get along. They actually hated each other. And this went back hundreds of years. There were racial differences, there were political differences, there were spiritual differences. And so these people hated each other. And so typically, Jewish people would take that blue route. They would make their lives harder on themselves just so they didn't have to walk through Samaria. Well, Jesus, his first unfiltered moment where his disciples would have been like, this guy's crazy. He's taking us right through Samaria. He's going to take us through enemy territory. This would have been unsettling to the disciples. Again, because they would have stuck out, right? They were Jewish. And the Samaritans would have said, clearly, there's some Jewish people walking through our area. They're not supposed to be here. They're not welcome. And so this hateful mindset went on for so long. But not only does Jesus take his disciples and walk through Samaria, he says, actually, you know what, guys? I'm tired. And they get to this little town called Sychar. I'm tired, so why don't we take a rest? You guys can go get some food. I'm going to sit at this well, this very famous well that lots of people knew about, and he took a rest, and he's sitting at this well. Let's just think about what this would look like in modern day, right? Because imagine this. You're going through an area, you're traveling through an area that you think this could potentially be dangerous. We're going to be recognized. We're going to stick out. And this may not go well for us. That would probably be something where you would like, let's get through this area as quickly as possible. Let's not stop and rest. This would be like if a bunch of us UT fans, right? We put on all of our UT gear. We're getting all geared up, ready to go watch, let's say, women's soccer. Soccer is my favorite sport, so I get to pick the sport. This is my story, okay? We're going to go see the women's soccer team play Dayton or Cincinnati. We're heading south. We're going down I-75, right? And inevitably, we're only 30 minutes into our trip, and someone's like, I'm either hungry or I got to go pee. What's 30 minutes away? BG, okay? Remember, we're geared up. We got UT stuff. And we stop at the Waffle House, which is the modern equivalent to a dilapidated well 2,000 years ago. I'm sorry if I offended anybody that works at Waffle House. I'm gluten-free, so I have no reason to go there, okay? So no shade on Waffle House. But we go there. We probably wouldn't feel safe, maybe. We would definitely stick out. People would have their eyes on us. So this is the kind of the situation that Jesus and his disciples are at. Jesus is resting at this well. His disciples have gone off to get some food. And then John tells us specifically, and we're going to get to this a little bit later, and he adds this detail for a reason. But John says it was around noon. It was noon. And that's a very important detail that we're going to get to later. So this is where we're finally going to pick up the story. So if you want to take notes, there's some notes in your handout, but we're going to start in verse 7 through 9. It says, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. So here we have Jesus sitting at this well all by himself, and a woman shows up. And they strike a conversation. Jesus asks for water. And this woman is perplexed because she recognizes right away, hey, you're Jewish, I'm Samaritan, we shouldn't be having a conversation. And then second, she's a woman and he's a man. And in this culture, if you were alone with a woman, this was a big no-no. You shouldn't be having these conversations. So again, Jesus is a little unfiltered, a little unhinged here. He's breaking all the cultural rules, and he doesn't care because he has a purpose. He has a purpose. And so he's seeing these things, and she's seeing these things, and she's like, because I'm a Samaritan and because I'm a woman, you should want nothing to do with me. You should want nothing to do with me. And I think sometimes we get that rattled into our brains and our hearts a little bit. When we think about who Jesus is and who we are, I think sometimes we just think, well, what would Jesus want to do with me? Why would he care about me? Does he know that I'm not a very good person? Does he know some of the decisions that I've made in my life? Does he know that I'm not very religious? Does he know that I've come from a background and a life that is just chaotic and messed up? Does he know these things? Yeah, he does know these things. I think these are really good questions, too. They're not unfair questions for us to be asking. But why would Jesus want anything to do with any of us? And I think it's because Jesus is the very definition of love. When we think about what love is, who love is, we have to think about Jesus. Because Jesus is God himself. So if you've ever wondered what is God like, you just need to look at Jesus. He's love. He's the very definition of love. And I think that's what he's trying to show us here, and that's what he's trying to show this woman. So Jesus is sitting at this well to have this interaction with Jesus to show her that he loves her and that he loves you. Every single person in this room. One of my goals as a pastor is that I do not want anybody to question that truth, that fact, that really huge reality that the God that created everything loves us. Little, sometimes we feel meaningless people. But we're people with great value in the eyes of God. So the story is just getting started. We got to continue. We're going to read verse 10 here. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water." So Jesus is basically telling her, hey, I didn't want to come out and say it, but I'm kind of a big deal. Like, you have no idea who you're talking to. And she didn't. She didn't know this was Jesus. Jesus' name would have been getting around everywhere. But she had no idea that she was talking to Jesus. So this woman is very understandably confused on what is happening. What did this guy just say? Like, did he say he's kind of like an important person, and that he's asking me for this mysterious drink called living water? What is happening? So she replies in verse 11, "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water?" Right? Obviously, I have no idea what's going through this woman's head. But it seems like she's kind of questioning Jesus's intelligence. Right? Like, you have nothing to draw water with, and you're talking about water as if it's a living thing. Right? Again, Jesus unfiltered. Nothing that he is saying right now makes sense. But the woman is thinking about water in the only way that she thinks about it, and the way that we would think about it, physically. Physical water. But Jesus is starting to open up, and he's starting to show us that this water it's a spiritual thing. It's something spiritual. And this next statement from Jesus is where we get the name H2O. Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again from the well." Everyone who drinks the water from the well, they're just going to be thirsty again. "But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." Something so much more. Right? So for those of you that grew up in church, you hear this term eternal life, and you equate it immediately to heaven, the afterlife, right? And that's okay. That's still true. But I think, again, Jesus is talking about something bigger that is here and now, not just something that we have to wait for in the future. He's talking about this more than just a forever life. He's talking about a satisfaction that this woman has never experienced, a refreshment that she's never experienced, something that brings hope, peace, and comfort to her life. He's talking about a living water that will flow out of her, and she'll feel different than she's ever felt before because she has this living water. She has the love of Jesus. And I think sometimes, aren't those the things that we want? Like, at a basic human level, we want peace, we want hope, we want comfort, we want refreshment, satisfaction. But every single time, it seems like it's out of our grasp. We can't hold on to it. It escapes us over and over again. Well, Jesus is about to show this woman, and I think us, something that is so important, something that we should pay attention to. So the story continues in verse 15. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." Okay? Now we're seeing a turn in this woman's relationship with Jesus, her understanding of Jesus. Before, she seemed pretty confused on everything he was talking about. But now it seems like she's begging for what he is offering. She knows and realizes that there's something different about him, and that he's no longer a weird man to her, but he is someone that is offering her something that she needs in life. Unfortunately, that doesn't last very long, because Jesus doubles down on his ability to be completely unfiltered. Okay? What he is about to say to this woman is one of those things that if you are out in public, and I'm just going to pick on dads because these are things that I do, where your dad says something out loud in public, and you're like, yeah, you can't say that. You should never say that to somebody that you just met. So Jesus is a little unfiltered, but he doesn't regret what he's about to say. What he's about to say out loud to this woman's face, he says it on purpose. Okay? So verses 16 and 18. Jesus told her, "Go call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true." Pretty direct. Pretty direct, embarrassing on this woman's part. And it seems really harsh and judgmental for Jesus to say something like this. But I think there's really, really good reasons of why he is doing this. Right? Let's just kind of talk about this scenario. This woman has been married 5 times. Even in modern day, we would say that's a lot of marriages. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think this is something that we really value here at H2O is we want to be authentic. If we are being honest with ourselves, we don't have many pure non-judgmental thoughts towards a woman that's been married 5 times. If we're being honest. We probably have thoughts of, well, what's wrong with her? What's her deal? Something must be wrong, or she doesn't know how to have relationships. But here's what it was like 2,000 years ago. This woman had 0 power in the relationship. Right? She would get married to a man, and the only one that could file for divorce back then was a man. So whenever the man was done with whatever purposes he had for her in the time, he would just say, "I'm done. I'm going to get rid of you." And it was really shameful to be divorced back then. So her only logical conclusion and thing that she would just try to do quickly is, I need to get married again. I need to attach myself to another man so that I don't have to feel this shame anymore. And so this went on 5 times, and then finally it just got to a point where she was like, let's just not do marriage. Let's just live together. I'm not going to deal with marriage anymore. So this woman was pretty low. Now would be a good time for us to come back to the fact that I mentioned earlier, that this woman is at a well at noon, the hottest part of the day. It's the Middle East, right? So this isn't Ohio hot. This is Middle East hot, right? So when would it make the most sense for her to go get water? This is crowd participation. In the morning, right? Okay, we all know weather. Good job, guys. In the morning, it's cooler. It's much easier. And guess what? That is when every other woman from her town would have gone to the well. So, every time you read the Bible, you should be asking questions. Why is this woman here at noon? Why is she here at noon? We don't really know for certain, but here's some guesses that people have made, people that have studied this culture and people that have studied the Bible, is that it seems as though her walk every morning, because of her situation, she's been married 5 times, her walk every morning with all these other women would have been full of shame and guilt and ridicule. And it came to the point where she was just like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. I'd rather just walk in the hottest part of the day to go get my water. And so she was just avoiding people from her village, the women who you think would stick up for her because they would understand she didn't have power in any of these relationships. And so she has secluded herself, and she's taken herself away from all the people in her village. And that's why she said earlier, she's begging Jesus, please, sir, give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again. I won't have to come here to get this water. She's like, this walk of shame could come to an end. I won't have to do it anymore. But here's what I think Jesus is trying to teach her. And I think something that humans have been struggling with ever since the beginning, ever since Adam and Eve. I think Jesus was trying to teach her about intimacy. Intimacy. The definition of intimacy, being fully known. Fully known. Jesus knows everything about this woman, the most shameful parts of this woman, being fully known without fear of rejection. Kind of our story, isn't it? Like none of us really truly want to be fully known. I would say that there are some people in this room who are older that still experience the fear and the worry that if they were fully known by somebody, that person would go, I don't want you. And I would say, especially for some of you freshmen or new students coming to Toledo, you're definitely thinking through that. I don't want people to fully know me too quickly as I get on this campus, because if they know the worst of me, they'll say, no, thank you. I don't want to be your friend. But listen, that is not how that works with Jesus. And I think we get it twisted up in our heads and our hearts so much that we think Jesus wants nothing to do with us. And we spend more time convincing ourselves that Jesus wants nothing to do with us because we forget the fact, or maybe we've never heard, that Jesus, his whole point of coming to this earth was to take those shameful things and throw them as far as the east is from the west, that they would never return and just hit you back in the face with shame, that God will never condemn and put that on you because he took care of the things that we're most ashamed of. He took care of it. And those things fit into a category that we talk about in the Bible, and that word is sin. The word is sin. We all have it. Nobody's immune to it. We see the world, how it struggles to keep peace and joy and comfort. And all we need to remember is that sin has destroyed our world. And we also contribute to it. We contribute every single day to it. None of us are immune to it. So here's what sin is. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to define it like this. Sin is anything that has no love for God and no love for others. That's what sin is. So let's look at this woman's life. What was her sin? Even though she was kind of a victim in this story, she didn't have any power. Her sin was she just kept going back to, if I attach myself to another man, I will be whole again. I will be new again. I will have someone that loves me. I will have someone that cares for me. I will find satisfaction and hope and peace and comfort in another man. And she just kept doing it over and over and over again. And just like this woman, we all have these things that we go to that are like wells that can't possibly quench our thirst. We keep going back to them looking for peace and comfort. I do it. We all do it. So I want you to take a look at this piece of art. So actually, one of the college students that we've worked with, he was an art student, and he made this picture of just wells everywhere. And you can see a person just wandering, going from well to well, wondering, is this one going to satisfy me? Is this one going to give me what I need? Is this one going to bring the joy and the comfort that I've been looking for? And the picture is just to show you can go to every single one of those wells, and they're just going to leave you spiritually dehydrated. They're still going to leave you thirsty for something, but Jesus is saying, I can provide you a living water that brings you so much more. So much more. And so if Jesus wanted to reject us, if we have that in our mind, if he was just like, these people are too messed up, he would have done it. But he didn't. He willingly did not put up a fight, and he took the consequences of our sin that we deserve so that we would have an example of, I am the well that you should be going to over and over again. And his love for us is so massive, and that we never can reach that same level and standard of love. But he forgives us, and he knows us, and he doesn't reject us. And that's intimacy. A God that knows us, everything, and he loves us. And when we know that, it changes everything about who we are. And there's story after story of people in this room that would say, yeah, everything in my life has changed. And that's what this woman, she's starting to realize that. She's starting to see that there is something happening in this moment. Because she's heard all the legendary Jewish stories. She's heard that there was going to be someone that was going to come and change everything. Someone called Messiah. The person that would save, the anointed one. And that's where we're going to pick the story back up in verse 25. The woman said, I know the Messiah called Christ is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us. That's her response. She goes, I know someone is coming. He's going to explain everything to us. And before I get to how Jesus responds, you guys remember when professional athletes a few years ago, when they made like an incredible play, they would go, I'm him, right? You know who they stole that from? Jesus, okay? They stole that from Jesus, because here's how he responds. Then Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. I'm the Messiah. You're talking to the one who came and is going to rescue you from the life that you're so ashamed of. And this is where the party gets broken up, unfortunately, right? We get to the crescendo of the story, and the disciples return, and they see him talking to this woman. They're very confused. She runs off because she's embarrassed, and she does something that is so out of character. She runs back to her village, and she does this in verses 28 and 29. Then leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah? Right? This woman who was hated in her village ran back to her village, to the people that hated her, and said, hey, I just met someone that's amazing. She had no shame anymore. She was open and out in the public, talking to people that have rejected her over and over again. And as a result of her going back to her town in this way, this is what happens. Verses 39 and 42 through 42. It says, many of the Samaritans from that town believed in Jesus because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, we no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man is the Savior of the world. That's a crazy, from beginning to end story. Her life story, which was once filled with shame and disaster, really all the people that she knew, she was telling them, hey guys, my story, my life matters. This guy told me everything about me, and he didn't reject me. He's the Messiah. He's the anointed one that we have all been expecting. And this is what I find amazing, is that the only really, truly simplest thing that she had to say was, he told me everything I ever did. That was her story. I think sometimes when we think about how do we share our faith with people, and we think, I don't know enough, this woman says, he told me everything I ever did. That was it. She told the people about her experience with the living Jesus, the living God that loves her. That's it. So, I'll be very upfront with you. Here at H2O, every time we speak on a Sunday morning, any life group that you come to, whether it's a campus group or a city group, our whole goal is to convince you of this love of Jesus that he has for you. That's our whole goal. to help you understand that you are not alone, that there's a God that loves you, and that your life matters and can be radically changed wherever it's at right now. So before we leave this morning, I want to ask you a question that was kind of stated in what we just read. Where in verse 42, they said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." I just want to ask you a question. Do you believe? Do you believe? And I want to ask that to two different groups of people. Because I know that there's a lot of new, young college students in this room, right? And many of you grew up in church your whole life, right? Your parents took you every Sunday, or your grandparents took you every Sunday, or you went consistent enough that you went to church consistently. And what I love about how the village people responded is that they looked at this woman and they said, "We don't believe just because of what you've said. We believe because we have heard for ourselves. This is your opportunity as freshman, sophomore, junior, senior in college for you to make your faith your own, to walk with Jesus on your own, to not have to be able to hold your mom and dad's hand and just believe what they said, but you can believe for yourself. You can ask the questions that you've always wanted to ask. You can think about all the ways that God has come through for you faithfully over the years and think, I'm so excited to get to know him on my own as a new person here at the University of Toledo. So don't just take other people's word for it. Make your faith your own while you're here. And then the second group, there might be some people here that are just like, I'm curious. I don't really know much about Christianity. I've never really been to church. It's the first week of college. You do new things, right? Someone handed you a card, someone handed you a water bottle, or someone knocked on your door this morning in your dorm and said, "Hey, I'm going to church," and you're here. And you don't really know what you believe, and that's okay. But I want to ask, do you believe? From what you've heard this morning, would you think that Jesus Christ, someone who lived 2,000 years ago, is still living and active on this earth, ready to change your life? And if it's not this morning that you would say, I believe, I really want you to come back. I want you to continue listening to these Jesus Unfiltered stories, because hopefully we're presenting a different side of Jesus maybe that you've never heard before. Some stories out of the Bible that you've never heard before. Because we really, really believe here at H2O that Jesus leads to eternal life. That living water that he promises, that leads to a life of peace, satisfaction, and hope. That's what you were made for. That's what you were created for. That's what you were originally designed for. We're going to sing about that. So the band is going to come back up and I'm going to pray. We're going to sing the song, Made for More.